this episode of Who Gets the China, where we are saving our sanity while navigating life with aging parents. Today, my guest is Jamie Sarche. She is the director of funeral planning at Feldman Mortuary. But more than that, she's really an outspoken advocate and ambassador for talking about end-of-life planning, talking about death, taking the taboo away that we currently have in our community about talking about passing and death and helping us use the right words, the right language, and be bold about talking about what happens after we're gone and how to help your family cope with that. So Jamie, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. Wow, I love that. Your introduction is so perfect because that's the truth. I'm just really being bold about this, that we're really fighting against this cultural norm that says, don't talk about death, don't think about death, what's wrong with you, you're so morbid. And I'm just trying to turn that on its head because the truth is death is the only thing apart from birth that we all have in common. Why wouldn't we talk about it?
Yeah, I always pool my community and ask, what would you like to know? And I mean, this topic led to so much rich conversation right off the bat. It was like, oh my gosh, we love that you're doing this because as we were saying, my kids who are adults, young adults, were like, oh my gosh, mom, that's so depressing. Why are you talking about that? Like, clearly they're not ready yet to have those conversations. But women in our stage of life and men who are dealing with aging parents and frankly, peers passing, we need to be able to talk about it more. So I'm excited to kind of dig in today with you. So, okay, first of all, we talked about this a little bit, but I mean, I think people are like, who does that job? Right? Who works at a mortuary? Who does funeral planning? It seems like just an odd field to find your way in. So tell me about how you found yourself here and why it's your true calling.
It is such my true calling. I really fell into it. I had no idea this is where it would be. I didn't go to mortuary science school. I'm not a funeral director. This was not the focus of my education or my early life. Like I really was planning to work in television. And then I got married young. I had kids young. I really didn't have much of a career. And I heard that Jim Cohen, who is the fourth generation owner of the funeral home where I work, Feldman Mortuary, that he was looking for someone to do this job. And it was literally like lightning struck. And I thought, that is the job for me. And that's the truth. I'm really good at it. I love it. I've been doing it for almost 17 years. And it every day feels like it is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. The background that I bring to it is just a real comfort in talking about the things that we're not supposed to talk about. Like I was a peer counselor in high school. I was teaching about AIDS in the early 80s when, that was just becoming something we knew about. I was pushing back against my college for the way that it approached date rape. That's who I am. And then when I was 26, I had a very close friend, Michelle, who I'd known since ninth grade and whose husband I had known and been very close to since we were 4.
Oh my gosh.
She got diagnosed with a glioblastoma. So, that's a terminal brain tumor. People don't live with it. But of course, everyone approached her in that really dumb way that we do to say, oh, you're young, you're strong, you're going to beat this. And I don't look at it that way. And I didn't approach it that way. And I think it's so dumb that we think you're at war with your body. You got to somehow win that war. You're not going to win some wars. And why would you want to set it up to be at war with your body?
Right.
So I said to her, I don't have to tell you things are going to be okay. And you don't have to tell me things are going to be okay. We can talk about all the reality of what you're dealing with. I'm a safe person for you to share your fears with. Because so many people, when somebody wants to share how afraid they are, maybe sort of like what your kids are doing, where they're just like, no, we can't talk about that because if we talk about that, we're going to make it happen.
Right.
I don't believe that. And so I think that when we don't talk about it, we make it a lot scarier and then leave people alone with that. And so that's what I did with Michelle. She died 18 months later when we were 28. I really feel like she brought me into this work, and it brings me so much meaning. And I know that I'm making a difference for so many people, for them to go, okay, yeah, this is safe to talk about. We're going to put these plans into place, creating peace of mind for ourselves. But really, what we're doing is giving our loved ones a path that they need to walk on so that they can grieve in a healthy and healing way.
That resonates so much because it's like if you don't want to talk about it, and as a child, even an adult child, you don't want to ask about it. Like, what a gift for a parent to give a child as an adult to say, I've handled all of this for you. I know when I pass, you're going to be experiencing tons of grief, sadness, emotion, but I have taken this off your plate. And
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, I love that. Like, I wish now that I know what I know, I will also do that. But I think
yeah.
it's a very small minority of my friends whose parents have specific plans and have told them what the plans are.
Well,
People don't
and
want
it's
to talk about it.
no, they don't want to. And they think, well, I don't have to, and I don't have to think about this because I'll be dead.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it doesn't matter to me.
Right.
So I'll be dead. Just do whatever you want. But the truth is, even though it's not really an emergency, it feels like an emergency when somebody dies. And the idea of like not knowing one thing, never having talked about this before, what really helps people in their grief process is to know that they've done the right thing. And if their person has put that plan into place, they know they've done the right thing. And then all they have to do is make a phone call to put that plan into action. They're not going to be fighting with the siblings about what the choices are. They're not having to think at a time that they really can't think because we're not as smart when we're in acute grief. Um, and they don't have to pay for it. And
Right.
that's really important. But one thing that I hear you saying, which is so fascinating to me, is that idea of my friend's parents haven't done this. Well, I understand. My friend's parents haven't done this either.
Hmm.
But what about our generation? Why aren't we also doing it? We don't know when we're going to die. So we ought to be doing it too. I did my plans when I was 42. Yeah, it's not just our parents who are going to need this stuff, it's all of us.
I mean, I'm just sitting with that because you're right, right? Like I'm 56, you know, it could be today, it could be 40 years from now. We don't know, but
Right.
you should spend some time thinking about it. I did an interview with a colleague and a friend who's a palliative care specialist. Her name is
Mhm.
Sarah McCarthy. And one of the themes that she talks about is defining your values for living well. And for me, it dovetails right into this like, what are those values that you want at the end of life? And how do
Yeah.
you want the end to go for your family and for yourself?
Well, and also that idea of I'm going to think about what my values are and I'm going to share it with my people.
Yeah.
You know, like we did our advanced directives, we did them with our lawyer, but we also have the conversation with our kids. So the conversation is so much more important in my mind than the paperwork. The paperwork is just where it gives somebody the permission to do the things you've talked about. So like in my life, I talk about this stuff all the time, as you know, you would expect.
Yeah.
But like my kids and my husband know that if I get some certain things that I have delineated, I don't want to live like that. And so we've talked about what the rules are around that. And we talk about it so much that we have jokes surrounding it. It's not uncomfortable to have the conversation. So, like, for example, I don't want to live with dementia. Alzheimer's is rampant in my family. All of the women in my mother's generation, or excuse me, in my mother's family have had it. My grandmother died of Alzheimer's and her two sisters. On the other side of my family, my dad's sister died with, I think, Alzheimer's, some kind of
Hmm.
dementia. I don't want to live like that. I don't want my family to have to visit me like that. I don't want to spend every dollar in the memory care unit. You know, we've really just had that conversation. So, I have to take Synthroid because I don't have a thyroid. And so the joke in my family is if I don't know that word, that's that's when we stop giving me medical care. And I've also talked about maybe we go to Zurich if that's the issue. So,
Hmm.
and to Dignitas, where you could
Yes.
end your life on your own terms. So like now I forget lots of words. I'm a menopausal woman. I forget lots of words. And so as I'm having trouble, I'm going, Synthroid, Synthroid, Synthroid. So it's very comfortable to talk about because we
Right.
just do. It's not
Yes.
charged.
Right, right. I
It's just
love that. I even
practice.
brought that up with my dad about the safe word. And
Yes.
my dad's 91 and we weren't talking about it in the death context. We were talking about it more in the driving and memory context. But I was like, yeah, we should have a safe word. And if you can't remember X, Y, or Z, this is a red flag. And I mean, that was great advice that you gave me. I mean, and I brought that into my life. And sometimes it's just these like little nuggets that we learn along the way that really open up a discussion, right?
Dad respond to that.
Um, well, it was kind of funny because I was like, when you can't remember how to get to Costco, my parents live in San Diego, and if you've ever lived in San Diego, like Costco is like the epicenter of it. And my parents live near and they're there like all the time. So I was like, if you can't find your way to Costco one day, like you need to let me know that. And then that's a red flag because that should be something that's deeply embedded. And so he kind of was like, oh, you mean like the other day when I kind of got confused in the car and I was like, oh my God, Dad. But he was, to be fair, programming his GPS and was struggling with the technology, not where he was going. But it opened up a kind of a conversation of like, yeah, these are the things that we need to be looking out for. And you also can be looking
Yeah.
out for them.
Well, and what's interesting with what I'm thinking about with your dad, like that idea of when it's time to stop driving, that's such an identity shift. It's so hard for people to think about, well, I won't be independent in the same way I've been independent. But what I think about with it is, God forbid I would hurt somebody else.
Right.
And that's, I think, what's so important that is kind of the same about this kind of conversation. Like, so many people think it's just about me. Like, when we're thinking about what do you need when you're dead, you don't need anything because you're dead. But, but your people do need. And so you need to think about it in terms of how am I going to make this good for my people? In the same way, like I don't want to drive because I don't want to ever hurt somebody else.
Right, 100%. And I think for a lot of us, like when we think about our impact to other people, that's more
Mhm.
powerful than our
Yeah.
impact to ourselves.
Yeah.
And so same with funeral planning, because
Yeah.
I might be able to say to myself, I like I'm doing this for my kids, right? I don't want to think about it, but I'm doing it for someone else so that they don't have to think about it. But
Yeah.
I think for me, where I am now, like I can do it for myself. Um, and I haven't, but I will. But it's hard for me to talk to my parents now at
Yeah.
91 to say it's like it's so possibly close. I mean, maybe it's not
Yeah.
close, but it might be close. So
Well,
how
it's
do I
not
think?
close no
Right,
matter what.
right. Well,
It's
that's true.
it's not theoretical anymore.
Right,
So I get that. I think it's much harder at your parents' stage of life than at your stage of life, where it's really just totally theoretical.
right,
The one thing I want everybody to understand is making these plans doesn't make anything happen. So a lot of times people don't want to make the plan because they think if they make the plan, they're going to die. And what I'm here to say, you're going to die no matter what. You're going to either die with a plan in place or you're going to die without a plan in place. It has no effect on what's going to happen. I planned for 340 people in 2025. They're fine. 340 people. Couple people in that realm died, but those are people who came to me. They already had pancreatic cancer. They had, things. And that's why they decided to make the plans, is because death was, pending for them. It was, they knew, they knew pretty likely how they were going to die. That's why they wanted to do the plans. Most of my clients, the vast majority of my clients, are going to live years and years and years and years and years. And if they didn't plan, they aren't going to live either.
Give me some words, give me some language. Like if I want to start a conversation with my parents, now let's be clear, like my parents have a trust and a will and all the things. And I've had conversations with them separately, but together it's hard to talk about. My mom is very clear. She wants to be cremated and she wants to have her ashes scattered somewhere that's easy for us. That's what she says in lovely mom fashion. And then my dad, on the other hand, has been very quiet about it. And he's from Iowa. Like, I think he wants to be buried, but we're not exactly sure if he wants to be buried with his family in Iowa, which feels like very logistically challenging. So he's been kind of less forthcoming about it. I don't want to be like, Dad, death is near. Let's talk about this. Like, help me have some words to bring it up with my dad. How do I talk about this?
Well, I really would just say, I interviewed somebody for my podcast, and this is what she does. I do not want to have to try and figure this out after your death. It is very important to me that I do what is right for you. And I want to know what that is. And I would say the idea of if he wants to be buried with his family in Iowa, unless there is a plot that he already purchased or one that's available to him, he's not going to be buried with his family. He might be buried in that same cemetery, but is it possible for him to be buried next to them? I don't know. Or within a real close proximity? I don't know. It's possible to investigate that. And somebody like me can help investigate that. And that's a good idea because you don't want to be doing that the day he died or the day after he died. I think it's just really to say, hey, I know this is scary. I know. But it's going to be really hard on all of us if we don't know what to do. Please help us do this. Can we do it now when it's not an emergency? And it really isn't that logistically challenging to get somebody from San Diego to Iowa. We transport people all the time.
Okay.
It isn't that logistically challenging. People think it is.
Uh-huh.
It isn't.
That's good to know.
It
Okay.
isn't.
I
Yeah.
mean, but and
You
also
need two
it's
funeral homes.
yeah, and kind of like what you were saying before, it's like I don't even if it is, I don't care. I want to do what you want. I
Right.
want to honor your wishes. And if I don't know your wishes, I can't honor them.
Well, and so many people will say, well, it doesn't matter to me. But that is such a cop out. And then that makes you have to decide what matters. And then the idea of like, I just want to do what's convenient for you. Your mom is saying that to you. I want to do what's convenient for you. The truth of the matter is, death is not convenient. And to just sort of say, just get rid of my body, just get rid of my body. And then that'll be convenient. And then you can just go back to your normal life because I want to make it easy for you. We're not doing our loved ones favors by saying it that way. Death isn't convenient, and we need at the time of a death. You're looking behind me at this poster that talks about what we need when we're grieving. And what we really need is reality. We really need to have some psychological hold on the fact that our person has died. And having some sort of ceremony is really important to help us to get that. And we need to recall the story of their death and their life. And we need to do that together in community. And we need to get support. And that's what we get from ritual. So this idea of, well, just, burn my body and sprinkle my ashes places. We think we're doing a favor to our people, but we're not doing a favor to our people.
Yeah, that's true. It's like it's only half of the process, right? Because
Yeah,
there's this physical thing that has to happen, but then there's the bigger emotional healing work that has to happen.
that's right. And we all talk about like a memorial service or a funeral as being closure. It's not in any way closure. There's no closing in this case.
Right.
There's an opening. We need the opening. We need the door to walk through so we can start processing this death. And if we don't do that, it gets stuck in our body and it ends up as physical or mental illness
And we just don't want to acknowledge that sometimes.
most of the time.
Yeah.
We don't want to acknowledge that. And we do that with people of saying, okay, you've got a couple days, you go off and grieve by yourself for a couple days and then come back and you be normal again. And you just go back to your normal life. And grief is not that.
I'm just thinking about like exactly what you're saying. We get patterned for how we deal with it with our families, right? Like the way our parents dealt with it is the way, just like everything else in our life, unless we break it, we're going to repeat that. And I'm thinking about when my mom's mom passed, I was on a weekend away with my sister. She was in college and it was Thanksgiving and I was with a bunch of friends and my grandmother passed and my parents didn't call us. It was like, we don't want to ruin your weekend. It's like, oh my God, you don't want to ruin our weekend. Like, this is bonkers. Like, my grandmother died. Why would you
Tell me they
not?
did not have a funeral without you.
Oh, there was no funeral. I don't think there was a funeral. I don't even know. I don't know what there was, to tell you the
There
truth.
was nothing then
I feel
because
like there was
you would
nothing.
know.
Right. I don't even remember. I
Oh,
remember my
Kirsten.
grandfather died at a funeral, but when my grandmother died, I don't think there was anything.
And that
Um,
was that was what, 35 years ago?
yeah, you know.
My father-in-law, who's 84, talks about that he still has regrets that when his uncle Wally died, his parents said to him, "Oh, you're in medical school. You don't need to come home for the funeral. Uncle Wally doesn't care. Nobody, you don't need to."
I
He still
know.
regrets that he didn't.
It's so because I think we as a society, maybe we're better now, but like we haven't traditionally viewed the funeral and the rituals and the routines as healing, right?
We're
It's
not
like
better now.
oh, okay, we're not. Okay. Wishful thinking on my part. But yeah, it's like you just think of it as something you have to do, and this person, that's what they wanted, but like
And it's
that
an
coming
obligation.
together. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It isn't an obligation to the dead person.
Right.
Again, the dead person is fine. The dead person has no needs anymore. They are dead.
Right.
The living people have lots of needs. And grief in mourning, mourning is the getting it out of your body. Um, that is very human and very much needed.
Give me an example of maybe leading somebody through the steps or like what is the roadmap to do a good job with this?
Yeah, I will say that the people who do it well are the ones who step out of this idea of I don't want to burden my people with some sort of ceremony, and they recognize it as the gift. The ceremony is the gift. The people who are doing it well are the people who go, I don't know what my people are going to need, but I'm going to give them everything. So if they don't need it, okay, it's just some steps they take. They don't need it, but it helps them. And then as opposed to the people who go, well, nobody needs anything. When you're dead, you're dead. Just burn my body and don't think about it at all. I really do think that the people who do it well are the people who are not just thinking about logistics, they're thinking about values. And what are the values that they have lived their life with? I had met with this couple. The husband really was making his wife do this. She was super reticent. She did not want to do this. Sometimes people are real mean when they come to visit me when that happened. She was not. But she didn't want to do this.
Uh-huh.
And she just kept pushing back. Why do we need to do this? I don't want to think about this. Well, her husband died and they had a memorial service here. And it was so fascinating because there were all these grandchildren who were like under 14 and they all came upstairs and they wanted to take a tour and they wanted to see the casket room. And I took them up into the attic where we used to
Oh
have
my
somebody
God.
live and they were not afraid. And
Yeah.
they just wanted to really be part of this. And then when I walked them down after the tour, I saw, the widow, and she said, Jamie, I didn't want to do this. And today I just am so grateful that we did this. And this has been so meaningful and it's so beautiful and it's so wonderful to be with the family and to be telling the stories about Lee. And it just feels so good and right and not painful,
Right. Right.
but it helps her to express that.
Yeah, because you're going to have the pain
Yeah. So
anyway.
it's just beautiful to
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah.
That's right. And what happens if you don't express it is then you suffer with
Right.
the pain.
Tell me in your role, how much of what you do is planning for what happens with the physical body when it dies versus the ceremony, or is it both?
It depends on the people.
Okay.
A lot of times it is mostly planning for what happens with the physical body. Is it going to be burial, green burial, which is no embalming, a biodegradable casket? We do a lot of that. And I think that is the gold standard. Is it going to be fire cremation? Most people have no idea of the environmental impact of fire cremation. They have no idea of how brutal it is on the body. So I tell them, and then they decide, is that right? Is it going to be water cremation, which is a much more environmentally sustainable method? There's no emissions, there's no gas. If you care about the earth at all, that's a better choice of cremation. Is it going to be natural reduction, which is really body composting, which is putting the body in a box with organic matter and turning it into soil, which truly is what happens in the cemetery as well, but it
Hmm.
happens over a much longer period. So we're going to talk through all of those things. We're going to talk about where some ceremony is. Who's the leader of that ceremony? Is it a clergy person? Is it a celebrant? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how does the family get to the ceremony? Are we going to drive them? How many death certificates do you need? Are there flowers? Should we videotape this? Is there going to be a Zoom? All those kinds of things. Should there be something in the newspaper? We're going to talk through all of that. Some people want to really talk about what does the actual ceremony look like? I want this song. I want this reading. I want, this kind of stuff. I have one client who has a true script of what happens at the ceremony, but that's one out of thousands. And if you don't do that, what happens is whoever the clergy person is or the celebrant, they're going to meet with the family and they're going to tell stories and they're going to learn about the person and then they're going to create the ritual. You need somebody who knows how to create ritual because this has to be meaningful. And when we think about ritual, a lot of us think, well, I'm not religious, and religion has a lot of ritual. And a lot of people think, well, I don't live my life in a religious way. I understand. But ritual is important for itself. So there's lots of rituals in our life. Like you and I were talking about holidays. It's new the day after New Year's Day. We were talking about what was Christmas like, what was Hanukkah like. That's ritual. Have you ever been to a birthday party and they don't serve cake? It really feels wrong.
Right. It's wrong. It's missing something critical. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what we need around death also. Death is a huge milestone, of course, for the dead person,
Yeah.
but also for the people who care about that dead person or who have a complicated relationship with that person.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this a little bit. I have a friend who is estranged from her dad, both her parents. Her dad has passed, her mom's still living. And I know, we talked a lot about estrangement. And I mean, she even acknowledged that the funeral home, I mean, they did a really beautiful job of helping her navigate the situation with her siblings who didn't necessarily honor the estrangement or respect the estrangement, and they let her come early and do her own goodbye and have her own ritual. And I just to me that was another place where you don't realize the role in the process that the funeral home was playing, but it was something so memorable for her that
Yeah.
they acknowledged her different kind of grief, more complicated perhaps.
Yeah, no, it's really, really, really important. And I don't know how she feels, and I hope she feels a sense of relief instead of regret.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when people are estranged and the person they're estranged from dies, they do feel relief.
Yeah.
And I do think that having whatever kind of send off is really valuable.
My dad will say things like he's not a super religious person either, but he'll say like I don't need a church service. And I think kind of what you were saying before resonated with me. That's fine. We don't need to honor you with a religious service, but we want there to be something. You
Yeah.
know, you've been an important
Yeah.
part of our lives. Like we want to acknowledge and come together and grieve. And I'm not saying he's saying don't do that, but it when there's not a church or a religious service, it's sort of like more vague, I think.
Yeah. Well, and that's when we start just thinking it's just about getting rid of the body.
Right.
And, I'm Jewish. My husband is Jewish, but I would call him just Jewish. Like I don't want him to go to services with me because he just radiates irritation.
Right.
So he's not part of that. But when his grandmother died, it was an interment. She was cremated and she was interred. So the cremated remains were interred with her husband who had been buried. And he said to me after the service that it was so weird for him because they went there, they put the urn in the hole and then they left. And he said, nobody even said Kaddish. Kaddish is a prayer for the dead that Jewish people say at a funeral.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know why we say it. He doesn't know what it means. He just knows that's what you do. And it made him feel incomplete not to do it.
Yeah, it's just a routine, a ritual, something you kind of come to expect, like birthday cake at a party, right?
Yeah,
It's
pie at Thanksgiving.
yeah, right.
It's how you know where you are.
Yeah, right. It's your guidepost, sort of.
Yes.
And when you lose
It's a
it,
great way to say it.
yeah, it's very unsettling at a time when you're the most unsettled you will probably ever be.
That's right. Wow, what a great way to say that. Grieving needs a container. And I think about it like the side of the swimming pool, that you have to have something to push off on to get going.
I mean, that's such a clear image, right? And it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
you need to be able to wade through the water, but you got to know when to push off and leave it sort of behind and continue through what's going to be murky. It's not going to be easy. It's not linear, but you've got to have like a starting point to say, okay, that phase is complete. Now I can move on to whatever.
and that ceremony really helps you because otherwise you're in this real limbo of like, my person died. What do I do next?
Right,
How do
right,
I handle this?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go back to some of the options for dealing with the body, because I think
Okay.
this is something people are so fascinated about. And there has been a lot of, I think maybe not new, but acceptance of different ways of doing it than like I think it used to always just be either you're buried in a box or you're cremated. So what are you seeing? Like, yeah, talk to me about.
Yeah, I'm going to just talk about all the options.
Yeah.
So traditional burial, I don't know why we call that because it's only been a tradition since the Civil War, which is the body is embalmed. That means the blood is removed and replaced with embalming fluid, which is essentially formaldehyde. If you ever dissected a cat in ninth grade physiology, that was embalmed. I don't know about you. I can still smell that.
Yes.
It is.
You're bringing me right back to my middle school science classroom with the soapstone
Isn't that
table.
funny?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It is a carcinogen. So it's bad for the people who do it, who actually do the embalming. It leaches into the groundwater. It is bad. There's not really a reason to do it unless you want to have a big public viewing or something very tragic happens to the body. And that's the way that the funeral director, the mortician can fix things so that somebody gets a peaceful last view of their person. A lot of funeral homes will tell you it's legally required. That is not true. Not in this country, not for transportation across state lines. It's not required.
Okay.
My understanding is it might be required in one state of Alabama, but I'm not even convinced that's true.
Okay. Good to know.
So look into that, if a funeral director tells you it's required. Green burial is what we really ought to call traditional burial because that's how humans have been doing it ever since there have been people, where the body gets tucked into the ground and goes back to the earth. And I think of that as the absolute gold standard because number one, it's good for the earth. The earth needs dead bodies. Everything that grows comes from something that was dead. And so lots of people say, well, I don't want to be buried because that's a waste. It is not a waste, not from an environmental standpoint at all. The earth needs it.
Are
Go
you in
ahead.
a box in a green burial, like any kind of a
You
box? Or are
can
you in
be.
like a shroud or fabric or just like,
It depends.
okay.
If you want green burial, you're going to be buried in a biodegradable way. Some people are going to be buried just in a biodegradable shroud. Some people are going to be buried in a biodegradable box. Um, like Muslim people bury with no box. Jewish people bury with a box that goes back to the earth, and it goes back fast.
Mm-hmm.
So, like in 4 to 6 years, everything is decomposed and is feeding the earth. And people who say, well, I just want to be a tree, that's how you're going to be a tree. You're going to be the grass and the trees and the bushes and everything.
Can
That's
you
what you're going
plant
to
a
be.
tree seed with it? Like, could you plant
Um,
like, or like,
it depends on what the requirements are of the
okay.
cemetery.
Oh, I guess
Maybe.
that's good. Yeah, that's
But
true.
also from a conservation standpoint, this anthropomorphizing of a tree is not good from a conservation standpoint. You should let whatever's supposed to grow there, not make something grow there.
Okay.
That, in my mind, is the gold standard from a grief perspective as well, because when we take our person from where they are and tuck them into the earth where they're needing to be, that helps us in our grief process. That kind of tactile, I'm shoveling dirt into the ground. That's really helpful. But again, we need what we know. So if you come from a culture that says everybody needs to be burned, then that's what you need. But you really should accompany them to the crematory as well, so you can be part of that. It's really, that accompanying is really important from a grief perspective. Water cremation is a very new kind of way to do it. That's where the body gets placed in a vessel with, in the system that we use, 12 gallons of water and an alkali that's similar to liquid soap. And it rapidly transforms all the tissue into a solution. And what's left is the bone. And the bone is in its natural state. It goes through a processor. And that's what we would consider ash. We call it ash in a fire cremation scenario, but it isn't. It's ground bone. In fire cremation, what we're doing is putting the body into an oven, which is called a retort. We use a lot of gas, like a cross-country road trip of gas, to make that fire happen. Yeah, I saw your face. It's a
I
lot
did
of
not know
gas.
that.
People don't know that. And then the burning happens for 2 or 3 hours. All of the emissions are going up into the atmosphere. You know how we used to burn leaves and trash and we
Mhm.
realized that was really bad? That's what we're doing with cremation. We're burning and it's bad for the environment. It's also a brutal process. So many
Sounds
people will,
terrible.
yeah, so many people will say to me, well, I don't want to be in the ground. And I'll say, well, what do you think about being in a fire?
Right.
And they just have never thought of it. So then the bones are left and they're real brittle because they've been burned and they get put through the processor. We call that ash. So many people will say, I want to be cremated by fire and then scatter me in a place that I think is beautiful. The funny thing with that is those bone remnants, they are really salty. The pH is wrong. It kills stuff. And when people say, I want to be scattered, like I was once in Waimea Canyon in Kauai, and we looked over on the side of this hiking trail, and here's this big pile of cremated remains. And I thought, somebody said they want to be scattered in Waimea Canyon. That is not how they envisioned it.
No.
And for the people who had to do the scattering, I'm pretty convinced they were like, oh, let's just get rid of this and run.
Yeah.
No, it's anti-ritual.
Yeah.
So that's fire cremation. The one thing that people do know about cremation, fire cremation, that is the only thing that people know that's true, is it's a cheap way to go, but you can find it really cheap and that's not safe.
No.
But you don't want the cheapest place. You
No.
need somebody that you trust.
Okay, that is good advice. That's always
Yes.
good
And then,
advice.
yes. And then the last option is composting outside of the cemetery. So that's called natural reduction. Some people call it terramation. And the body goes into a box with 4 times the body weight of organic matter. it is attached to good oxygenation. There's a bacterial tea that's put in there. It's turned every so often. It's really very similar to backyard composting. And after 4 to 6 weeks, the bones get taken out and put through the cremulator to break them up. And then they go back into the box and everything turns to dirt. And that can be donated to places that need land restoration. Your family can have it. I think that's a great choice too. So like the choices I think are really good, first of all, is green burial, I think is number one. Water cremation, composting, I think those are really good. I don't like fire cremation, but if you're making an educated decision, then I think then you're figuring out what matches your values.
Right.
And if it matches your values, then great. I don't have judgment about what you do. I don't want to do it. I don't want my loved ones to do it. But as long as you know what we're talking about and you still think that's a good choice, then it's a good choice for you.
I think people don't want to think about it that much.
That's right.
So you sort of take what's common.
Yes, and fire cremation is what's common.
Right. And like what you just said a few minutes ago, we need what we know. So true on so many levels and a lot of topics. But this too, like you just are sort of like, I don't want to spend that much time thinking about it. So I know cremation, it's common. Seems like it must be fine for all these other people, probably fine for me. But if you're really reflecting on your values, what matters to you, then maybe that's not the best choice for you.
And what I think a lot of people think, they think that I'll die and then poof, I'm turned into what we call ash. Again, it's ground bone. Or they might think, oh, it's like the movies that I've seen where people get cremated in India and that seems spiritual. It's not like that.
No.
I'm not even sure it's still like that in India. So you need to know what it really is. And again, if it's fine for you, then it's fine.
Right. So how much do these options cost? And I'm not saying you need to give us like the details, but like I have, you could tell me it's $500. You could tell me it's $20,000. Like I have no idea what these costs are.
So you could find fire cremation for $500. Do not do it.
Okay.
Do not. A reputable funeral home, it's going to be about $3,500 for fire. Water is going to be about $5,000. Natural organic reduction about $8,000 to $10,000. Burial about $8,000 to $10,000 plus a cemetery plot.
And how much does a cemetery plot cost?
It's a wide range. It could go from $3,500 to $20,000.
Right. And if I want like I don't know,
I'm not including the headstone in this or a mausoleum. It could be much, 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 much more.
I was in Argentina many years ago. And I don't know if it's a tradition everywhere, but at least in Buenos Aires, like the way the cemeteries there, the bodies are like above the ground in these like marble, I don't know if it's I don't know what you would call it, a casket or a crypt or something. And so, like as you walk through the cemeteries, you're walking through these marble containers and it's strange, but just different, not what we're used to, like a grassy
that's culturally
place.
What they need.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe that's not the way it is anymore, but, and then, so the other thing that people were asking is like, well, how much does a funeral cost? I don't know. I have no idea. Like, and I guess it depends it's like a wedding, right? It depends what you do. Or no.
It's not like a wedding.
Okay.
A wedding is really going to be about how many people you have.
Okay.
That's not true with this at all.
Okay.
And so many people will say to me, well, we're only going to have 7 people there, so it should be less expensive. No. It is the same work that the funeral home does, whether you have 1,000 people or 10 people.
So it's not the services and things around it are not where the cost is. It sounds like the cost is really in the disposing or the treatment of the body.
Or what kind of casket you have.
Oh,
Like, I mean, I have caskets here that range from $1,900 to $15,000. But some funeral homes are never going to show you the $1,900 one, which is again the reason why you need to do this plan ahead of time. Because
Right.
when people are grieving, it's super easy for them to be taken advantage of. And most funeral homes, the least expensive casket you're going to see is probably going to be in the $3,500 range. But then they're going to say to your people, wow, if you really love your mom,
Right.
don't you think you should get a better casket?
Yeah, it's like when you're buying an engagement ring, right? Like, well, if you
Yes,
really love this person,
yes,
size up to whatever.
yes,
And if that's not your value and that's not what
right.
matters, you should know that going in to say, these are the things that matter to this person or to our family. And maybe your family cares about a fancy casket, but maybe they don't because it's going to be in the ground for eternity and it's not
Well, and that's
environmental.
where it is like a cultural thing. Like you need what your cultural norm is. So, like people from some cultures, like they have like a going home ceremony where they have to really look good to meet God. And that's very important. So I don't have judgment if they get a $10,000 or $20,000 casket and embalm because that's part of what they need
Yeah,
to grieve properly.
right. So do people still do lots of viewings or is that kind of becoming passé?
The people I see don't
Okay.
do a lot of viewings, but we see people typically who are, they come from a culture that it isn't typically, we don't view.
Yeah.
Um, but like we'll make, if somebody wants to see their loved one, we'll make that happen, but that's different than a public viewing.
Right. When somebody passes,
Mhm.
what happens? Like, what do I do? Who do I call? Do I call you? Do I call a doctor? Do I call it emergency? I mean, what do I do?
Great question. So it's really going to depend. If somebody dies at home or, at a hotel or, in a non-medical facility and they do not have hospice care, you call 911 and the coroner sends an investigator to see what happened and to see if that death is natural and to do whatever investigation they need to do. If someone dies with hospice care in place, and typically hospice care is not a place to go, it's a service.
Right.
If they die with hospice care, you call that hospice. If they die in the hospital, the hospital, is the one who's going to notify the coroner or the hospice notifies the coroner. And then the medical professionals are the ones who call the funeral home and say, okay, it's time to pick up this person. And we're available 24 hours a day. It's pretty typical that a funeral home is available 24 hours a day. But I will tell you that if somebody dies and the first thing you have to do is go to Google to figure out what funeral home to call, that's really hard. And that's where you start doing it if like I just want the cheapest option because I'm overwhelmed. I can't think about this. And if you go with an option that you don't like, once you get there to meet with their staff, it becomes really hard. You can't really leave. Your person
Right.
is in their care.
That's
You
true.
can't just leave.
Yeah. You're not going to be like, forget it. This
Yep.
doesn't feel good. I'm going to move the body someplace else. Like it's
No, it's
too
very hard.
late.
It is too late. And also they'll charge you for that removal fee. So it's so much better if it's been planned ahead.
I'm really hearing you, and I'm learning a lot about the reasons why it should be planned ahead and talked about ahead, or at least pick the place that you trust to help you navigate those choices, even if maybe the person can't cope with, I don't want to decide between green burial or fire or whatever the things are. But at least if you have like a trusted partner that you can say, okay, like we know this is the funeral home that's going to help
Yeah,
us.
that's good. But here's what I would say and
Okay.
what you were talking about. If the person themselves can't cope with making that decision, I want them to think about what their loved ones are going to go through when they are least capable of doing it. So it's really like, in my mind, this incredibly selfish decision to say, well, I don't want to think about it. I'm going to dump my mess on you on the worst day of your life.
I work with a social worker who's a home health social worker, and she helps people plan. And one of her pieces of advice is no decision is still a decision. That's exactly what you're saying. Not deciding
Yes.
is a decision, and it's kind of
Yeah.
a mean
Not
decision.
deciding is making your people do it.
Yeah. And we don't want that, or I don't want that.
I don't want that.
I don't want that for my kids.
And there is a poet who's also a funeral director. His name is Thomas Lynch, and he has this joke that says, "Yeah, I'm going to be a burden to my kids. They've always been a burden to me, but I don't want to live like that."
No, we don't want to live like that. Hopefully, we're going to change the dynamic, right? Like we can live idealistically and we can change the things that we want to change just because it's what we know. Like you said, we need what we know. I totally believe that, but we can change what we know and make it better for our kids also.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's break those really bad patterns.
Is there something else that I should have asked that I didn't ask, or a final parting thought that you want to share?
I really do think my final parting thought is that everybody needs this. We talk about, oh, I got to get my parents to do this. Yep, we do have to get our parents to do it, and we have to do it.
Yeah.
It's not just for the elderly generation, it's every generation. And at some stages of our life, we're not, even financially ready to do it. So I understand if you're 30 years old, you have other priorities right now. And please God, you're not going to need this for a long time. But if you're 55 years old, make it a priority to put your own plans in place.
And also prepaying. Like that was
Yeah.
something that we talked about a little bit. If I can and do pay for it now, then I'm paying in dollars this year versus, I mean, and I guess that's a question, is that true?
Well, it depends on your funeral home that you go to. So you
Okay.
want to ask, are they
Okay.
going to guarantee today's prices? My funeral home does.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's so much better to pay today's dollars. These things double in cost every 7 to 10 years. When you do it in your 50s, you could pay for it over a long period of time because you're going to miss hopefully decades of inflation. So even if you're paying over a long period of time and you live all those years to make the payments, you're still going to be paying much less than what it would be if you had done nothing. And there's a life insurance component. So if you make the first payment and then God forbid you get hit by a bus, it's paid for. So it's so smart. So you don't have to have $10,000 today as a 55-year-old person.
Hmm.
Even if you're 89, you could pay over a year for the same as cash. So the younger you are, the more options there are for how you pay for it. And a lot of people will say, well, what if I move? With my funeral home, the funds are held by an insurance product. So it goes with you if you move away.
It's one of these things where an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, too, right? If you just spend a couple hours thinking about it now,
Yes,
you're going to save yourself and your family a lot of headaches and money. And I mean, I know we
that's
don't want
right.
to feel like we're being cheap at the end of our life when we're talking about this, but it's the reality, right? Like, would you rather have the money spent on this or a trip to take to celebrate their life or something else?
Look, and that's an interesting thing too, because people do get cheap about this. And what they get cheap about is, well, I'm just going to cremate because that's the cheapest option. But what they're really cheapening out on is the path for their loved ones to grieve.
Well, this has been so fascinating. I love just that we can ask any question without fear or shame or embarrassment. And I know there's a lot of questions that people like don't know who to ask, but want to ask. So
Yep, I'm your person.
you are our person, and I love that. Well, I'm so thankful for your time. I'm going to let you get back to doing what you do. And I know our listeners are going to love it and probably have a lot of questions. And I'll be sure to share the information about Feldman Mortuary in our show notes. So if they need to find you, they know where to.
Thank you. And I'm also going to send you an article I wrote called Body Talk that's going to talk about all these options.
Yes. Awesome. I would love that.
Okay.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate your time. Who Gets the China is written and hosted by Kirsten Mao, produced by Aaron Bryce of Blue Ogden Productions. Our theme music is composed by Greg Fellman of Wind Sand Productions. Our cover art is by Jen Beam of Gigawatt Studio. For more stories and expert advice, follow along on Substack or at www.whogetsthechina.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who might appreciate the conversation. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time.